The city of Neo-Arcadia was a monument to regulated power, 1,000 towers of chrome and glass scraping against a synthetic, smog-filtered sky. Below the grinding gears of industry and the hum of transport rails lay the truth. The city was not powered by electricity, but by the stolen energy of the great weave, the Aether grid.
Wow.
This grid was controlled by Omnicore, a monolithic corporation that had commodified magic, turning raw, unpredictable ether into docile, digital power. Our protagonist was Kira Byte, a rogue technomancer who lived in the low-level data streams, a phantom in the digital shadows. Kira's magic was a blend of two forbidden arts: the ancient chanting of elemental runes and the rapid-fire scripting of binary code. Her world was a constant battle between the structured logic of silicon and the chaotic beauty of genuine magic. She carried a single profound weight: the disappearance of Ronan, her mentor, and the last true Aether seer, who had vanished trying to expose Omnicore's secret. Ronan had always warned her, the moment they bind the Aether, Kira, they bind the soul of the world. She believed him. The city felt cold, the colors muted, the magic users suppressed by Omnicore's pervasive static fields. Ryu looked down at his empty hands. Realizing the true weight of the power offered, vengeance was easy. Purity was agonizingly difficult. One night, while breaching a load air distribution node for spare data, Kira intercepted an anomaly. It wasn't just data, it was pain. The packet was a fractal scream, a raw burst of ether energy encrypted within a standard system log, labeled with a level 10 security clearance. She spent 3 days decrypting it in her dilapidated hideout, a cluttered space lit only by holographic runes projected onto broken circuit boards. What she uncovered made the blood drain from her face and the runes she was projecting flicker. Omnicore was building a true ether siphon. This siphon wasn't just draining power. It was pulling the raw ether of the weave from the very fabric of the reality, filtering out the chaotic magic and turning the residue into corporate currency. The final phase, scheduled for midnight tomorrow, was the activation of the Nexus Core. Once activated, the Nexus Core would permanently sever the world's connection to the free ether, plunging Neo-Arcadia into a technological utopia built on magical extinction. Kira's hand trembled as she overlaid the siphon's schematics with ancient protection scrolls Ronan had left her. The diagrams matched perfectly. The Nexus Core was housed in the topmost floor of Omnicore Tower, the centerpiece of the entire megacity and the most heavily guarded structure on the planet. She knew what she had to do: inject an uncontrolled, volatile payload of raw magic, a single spark of ether fire, directly into the Nexus Core. This spark would crash the entire grid, freeing the ether, but the resulting backlash would be catastrophic for anyone near the epicenter. Her heart pounded, but the choice was clear: the world's chaos or humanity's controlled death. First, she needed schematics of the tower's internal security network, including the location of the main static field dampeners. She made contact with her only ally, a deep web information broker known only as Cypher, meeting him in the abandoned subterranean transport tunnels. Cypher was a man of chrome and shadow, his face obscured by a data mask, his voice synthesized and cold. Omnicore Tower. Level 400. Direct Nexus Core access, Kira whispered, the ether-coded data crystal heavy in her palm. Cypher didn't flinch. You're asking for the architectural skeleton of a god. Flux. The price is your entire life's crypto account. Done, she said, transferring her funds without hesitation. Money was meaningless if the ether died. He handed her a tiny humming cube. The data is clean, but the tower is protected by active defense runes, not just lasers. Be careful what you touch. Kira spent the next 6 hours creating the payload. She didn't use power. She used blood and focus. She meticulously carved the most volatile, freedom-based runes onto the data crystal, enchanting the silicon until it glowed faint violet. This crystal wasn't a weapon. It was a Trojan horse, a piece of primal magic disguised as manageable data. She slipped into the Omnicore Tower maintenance tunnels just as the city lights dimmed for the midnight system cycle. The walls of the tunnels were pulsating with low-level static fields, making her skin crawl and dulling her innate magic. She used Cypher's schematics to navigate the obsolete piping system, moving upward through the central ventilation shafts. The challenge began on level 150, the first boundary of true corporate security. A laser grid, invisible to the naked eye, but humming loudly in the ether spectrum, crisscrossed the hallway. Kira didn't disable it.
Oh.
Instead, she performed a complex ether code sequence, briefly shifting her energy signature out of the laser's detection matrix. It was like tuning a radio to a non-existent frequency. She existed, but the machine couldn't see the wavelength. She moved through the razor-thin beams, her breath shallow, knowing one mistake would trigger a full quarantine. On level 280, she encountered the first sentry, a massive automated security drone hovering silently in a corridor. It wasn't armed with bullets, but with a short-range, targeted static field generator designed to paralyze mages. Kira engaged the drone in a silent duel. She manipulated the air currents with tiny, subtle wind runes, pushing the drone into a power conduit. The drone sparked violently, its targeting systems overloaded, and it crashed into the floor, inert. The climb was relentless. Every floor presented a new, calculated defense, a machine designed by someone who understood the limits of magical improvisation. On level 350, she was cornered by two Omnicore spellguards, low-level mages recruited and trained to only cast defensive, grid-approved spells. They cast a net of crystallized lightning, intending to bind her. Kira smiled faintly. Their magic was predictable, relying on the grid for its structure. She quickly reversed the polarity of the nearest maintenance panel, injecting a burst of unbuffered ether into the crystallized net. The net dissolved into meaningless light, and the shock backfired, knocking the two guards unconscious. She reached the door to level 400, the final barrier. It was a massive steel arch, inscribed not with text, but with ancient glowing suppression runes. These were the true static fields, designed to completely nullify all etheric energy within its radius. Kira pressed her hand against the cold steel, feeling the deep spiritual vacuum the runes created. Her inner ether screamed in protest. She couldn't ether code her way through. She needed pure, physical force or deception. She remembered a small, forgotten flaw in the runic structure Ronan had mentioned years ago, a weakness based on directional entropy. Using a small optical wire she carried, she painstakingly connected to distant points on the runic arch, creating a tiny short circuit. The suppression runes flickered, momentarily confusing their directional shield. The heavy steel door slid open with a hiss. She stepped onto level 400. It was a vast, circular chamber, dominated by the Nexus core at its center. The core was not a computer. It was a colossal, spiraling crystal conduit, humming with millions of captured souls of ether. Standing before the core was Director Silas Gearson, clad in a sleek, obsidian suit of armor that radiated anti-magic energy. Gearson didn't turn. His voice was calm, synthesized, amplified by his armor. "Expected you, Kirabite. The apprentice always follows the master's ghost." "Where is Ronan?" Kira demanded, her voice echoing in the silent chamber. Gearson finally turned, his face a mask of cold corporate efficiency. "Ronan? He is part of the core now. Excellent power source, stubborn but potent." The realization hit her like physical force. Ronan hadn't vanished. He had been absorbed, his life force fueling the siphon's design. Rage, cold and pure, replaced fear. She had to destroy the core, not just for the world, but for Ronan's eternal freedom. "You sought to bind chaos, Gearson. But you have only created a bomb," Kira stated, clutching the ether fire crystal. Gearson laughed a dry, emotionless sound. "Chaos is inefficiency, flux. The grid is perfect efficiency, and you cannot touch the core." He raised his hand. The obsidian armor flared, projecting a massive static field that shimmered like heat haze, pressing against Kira's very being. Kira felt her magic drain away instantly, leaving her feeling brittle and weak. This was the most potent suppression field she had ever encountered. A simple decifier crystal, a simple, desperate physical throw. The crystal clattered harmlessly against the base of the core's pedestal. Its violet light instantly snuffed out by the static field. "A fine effort at data corruption, technomancer," Gearson mocked. "But without ether, your spark is just expensive silicon." Kira realized the fundamental flaw in her plan. The raw ether needed to power the spark was blocked by the anti-magic field. She had to bypass the static field entirely. She had to find a way to make the core recognize the spark as a part of the system before the field could neutralize it. She glanced at the Nexus cores, seeing the swirling light within Ronan's faint, captive energy among the millions of others. The answer lay in the ancient texts. True Aether fire must be lit by a sacrifice of pure, unmanaged essence. Gearson began to walk toward her, slowly, savoring his victory. This ends now. Flux. Omnicore always wins. Kira ignored him, focusing every ounce of her remaining spiritual strength on her left hand. She reached inside her own body, locating the small, wild pocket of untamed ether. All true mages possess the spark of life. It was the deepest source of her unique magic, the very thing Ronan had taught her to protect. She performed the most dangerous, irreversible spell, the transfer of essence. Her hand began to glow, not with the violet of runes, but with the painful, raw gold light of true life force. Gearson stopped, surprised by the sheer intensity of the light that pierced even his suit's optical filters. "What are you doing? That is suicide," he yelled, recognizing the forbidden ritual. Kira took one final defiant step forward, ignoring the pain that radiated from her core. She slammed her golden glowing hand directly onto the suppressed data crystal at the base of the core. Her pure, sacrificial ether bypassed the static field, acting as the organic ignition for the volatile ether fire payload. The crystal didn't just light up, it exploded internally, shattering the digital structure and injecting raw, wild magic into the Nexus core's code. A sonic boom of pure, unmanaged ether ripped through the chamber, tearing through the static field. Gearson screamed as the anti-magic in his suit instantly overloaded, short-circuiting every piece of chrome and wiring. The obsidian suit collapsed, leaving behind only the director, who was instantly exposed to the raw, untamed weave. The Nexus core began to implode, its massive crystal spiraling out of control, releasing a tidal wave of golden white ether back into Neo-Arcadia. The city below erupted into chaotic beauty. Cars floated momentarily, streetlights became glowing runes, and the synthetic smog cleared. Revealing real stars for the first time in a century, Kira collapsed, the sacrificial spell completed. Her vision dimmed, but she could hear the chaotic, beautiful song of the freed ether. The grid was down. The machine age was over, replaced by a world reborn in magical chaos. A world of potential and danger. Kira was still breathing, but the spark was gone. She was now just flesh and bone, but her purpose was fulfilled. As the golden light flooded the chamber, the faint, shimmering ghost of Ronan appeared beside her, giving her a silent, knowing nod before dissolving into the released ether. A single spark of ether fire had burned down the machine. Thank you for watching this story from Storycraft Studio. If Kira's sacrifice in the machine age resonated with you, please like this video. Share it with fellow Sci-Fantasy lovers, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio for more epic tales.